Hello fellow humans and welcome to the episode of Your Replays, and today I want to focus on how to deal with extremely horrible teammates, and one of those horrible teammates could possibly be a T30, which is a heavy tank, but some people don't understand that. Now luckily, Mizarentna does know that the T30 is just a complete heavy tank and nothing else, because obviously the T30 was a heavy tank in real life, and it even was a heavy tank in World of Tanks PC before it got shafted off to be the tier 9 to the E4. And to be honest, the T30 is a tank that is tier for tier better than the T124 because it, first of all, doesn't have the massive cupola, and it also does have gun depression. Now, all you have to do is put this thing on a ridgeline and put it to work. And at long range, it can be effective as well. Now, however, if we look at the mini-map for the entire time already, I'm just driving around here, there is a tank in the back of the map. Now, I didn't cut this because anyone said anything bad or anything like that. I just cut it because it's the rest of the part is boring. So, then nothing happened. So, if you don't want me to not do it, put it in the comments. What do you think about it? Now, 2 versus 4 with 3,000 damage already dealt, which is pretty solid. And again, at this point, you still have that T22 medium, a premium tank, camping in the back, which is one of the worst things to see. I mean, look at him. He's not doing anything really at this point. I mean, he did get one shot there, but he's completely forgot what a medium tank is supposed to be, and he's now camping at the back. And luckily, and this is exactly the first thing I want to talk about here, luckily you can use a player like that wonderfully, because that's what you want to do. You don't want to help a guy like that, you want to be able to play off them, right? Because if you help him, that guy is very unlikely to be able to even carry himself. So if you want to win, it is unfortunately necessary to use that to your advantage. Now, what I would do here, again, I wouldn't pull back like Miz is doing here. I would go forward, because that way the Uniherd kind of has to follow, and possibly it does run into the range of the T22 medium tank, because there's 2 questions you have to ask yourself when you have a complete 0 on your team like that. How can I make them useful, and how can I make use of them? And that's the first thing how you do it. Let's do 5,500 damage, which is quite insane, and pretty much the only reason this team has won, because look at that, the T22 medium was camping at the back, yet he still did 3rd highest damage, which is insanity. And that is unfortunately rewarded way too many times. Who does get a reward though are my channel members, because they're great. Thank you very much for supporting me. There you go, have them on screen. Thank you very much for being a channel member. Now, if you want to join as well, join buttons down there. Now, second game is by Dave in the Pharaoh, a very new tank. Now, I didn't really cover this vehicle in a video, so we're going to talk about it now. It's a very unimpressive tank. Like, yes, it does have an autoloader, so it does definitely help it quite a bit, and you can do a lot of damage with it, as you can see right there. However, in general, it has not that great armor, and the mobility of it is not really amazing either. However, it is definitely better than something like a Predator. There's no doubt about that, because, I mean, the Predator is shocking at best. Now, what you want to do here, in a team like this, you're on the bad side. Like, this replay is in here because this entire team is on the bad side of the map, right? You're not supposed to be here. If you fight here, you have a disadvantage. If your enemy team goes to the other side and the enemy team is somewhat semi-competent, you lose. Now, luckily, in this case, what the case is here are that both teams are on this side, in which case it then just simply depends on who's the better team, pretty much. So, ideally, you don't want to go to this side, right? Because then you rely on the enemy's stupidity to win, in most cases, if you're not that great of a player. Obviously, an extremely good player is going to make it work either side. However, if you're not such a great player, if you're average, and you'll know, hopefully, you absolutely do not want to go to this side. And the problem that this side brings is exactly this right here. You know, you get surrounded extremely easily. Now, luckily here, the enemy team has completely thrown away and got completely overwhelmed and are now pretty much dead. But this is exactly what you want to avoid doing. You don't want to get surrounded. You never want to have enemies on two sides of you, right? Because if enemies are on two sides of you, you can't angle for all of them. However, you can do 4k damage in the Pharaoh. Is it a good tank? Not really, but it definitely does work, and that is an ace as well. So, not too bad, but it cut off there. And now we go into the next one, with a name that I find a bit questionable. But nonetheless, it is a good game in the SU-130. Now, what you want to do in this tank, this is one of those tanks where you have to make use of your team, no matter if they're bad or good, because, I mean, you can play it aggressively, and it will work if you're good enough. However, you ideally might not want to. Now, the shark has somehow died already, which is interesting. And the light tank, or one of them, is in the middle, and the other one is camping right there. Now, at this point, you can't blame him that much because he's already on low HP, but you might still try and go somewhere else, trying to find the spot, trying to find some damage in another place instead of camping with tank destroyers. Just like that medium tank is doing it down there as well. So if you have a camping T-49 and a camping whatever that is not what you want to do. And now already down 2 tanks right there, which is really, really bad. It's a T-69. There you go. Now let's speed up here a bit to skip that boring part. Taking a blind shot. I don't know if that hit or not, but what would you rather have? Speed it up or cut it? Because I don't want to like just talk about nothing for a minute just to cover ground. Now in this case, you want to make use of the few things that you have. In this case, T92 has decided that he wants to throw away, which is great for the team here, but obviously bad for the enemy. That's 2f4 versus 4 because that T92 just completely threw away. Now in the enemy team's case, I should very much be talking about that T92 because you don't do that, right? If you're alone, why would you rush into 3 tanks? That is about the worst decision you can make. Ideally, you always want to make sure that you win the fight before you start it, right? Because if you take a fight that you can't win, why are you taking that fight? That is game awareness right there that you might want to have. Now, it is down to 3 players. Luckily, the camping medium and light tanks weren't that big of an influence in the end here. And that's a big influence though. Now, I personally wouldn't have pushed here, or at least I wouldn't have done it in this way. But it didn't work out great. But now, 3 versus 2, which is a very nice little advantage. Mainly due to doing 4,000 damage in an SU-130, obviously, just keep them back. And yeah, the easiest way to deal with bad players is to use their hit points for your damage. Right? That's the one rule. That's the easiest way to deal with extremely bad players, or an AFK as well. Try to position yourself in a way that you're not the easiest target, right? And you should do that in general if you want to do really well. If you're not the easiest target, then you're not likely to get shot at. It's the same as if a lion breaks out of its cage, you don't have to run faster than a lion. You simply have to run faster than the guy next to you. So, or you have a stake in your pocket that you can throw over there. But there are no smoke screens in Blitz, so unfortunately that tactic won't work. And what does work is 5,000 damage in SU-130, which is a very beautiful game and a very questionable nickname. Yeah, I don't know, mate. I'm not a fan of like things like that because it just makes it sound better than it was, which is horrible. So I'm not a fan of that. Now, speaking of a long time ago and old, sorry, Razvan. This is Razvan in the STB. I very much apologize for that, I just couldn't stop it. Anyway, the STB-1 is a very good tech. It has great mobility, it has the gun depression, it has turret armor as well. It does work out fine. Now, how you want to play this vehicle? Again, you want to have an unfair advantage. Now, brawling with a Progetto is actually pretty useful. If you can track him, if he's just unloaded all of his shells, you can brawl the guy because his DPM is going to be in the bin. However, if he's fully loaded, you might not want to go for that. However, attack like the STB, it can still work out just about fine. It's not about always winning every fight, but it's about maximizing what you can do. And in this case, again, the team is in the city. However, Razvan made the, in my opinion, completely correct decision of going to the field side here, because something like an STB is absolutely and utterly useless in a city. It does not belong there unless you're traversing through it to get an advantageous position somewhere else. Fighting a city with an STB-1 is about the dumbest thing you can do. So, ideally, in a situation like this, it works great, right? Because the team's in the city, a lot of the enemies are in the city as well, so they're gonna brawl it out, they're gonna have a horrible time. There is no reason to go in there. And that's another important thing to how to deal with a bad team, is it's way what's a good decision and what's not. Like, for example, if you have one medium tank on your team, and they have, you know, 2 medium tanks and a, I don't know, chieftain, it might not be a great idea to go out there still alone. However, if you can take the chance to do the right thing, you absolutely should. And in this case, it pays off beautifully with over 6,000 damage collected already, which is very nice. So, to sum it up again, make use of bad players. It's very simple. Use their hit points. Obviously don't camp behind them, because that's worse. However, make sure that you make them effective, because that way you'll win more and they will too.